The sepia-toned photograph rests on my desk, bathed in the warm glow of my desk lamp. 5 young women in high-necked Edwardian dresses, their faces solemn, as was the custom for that era. On the back, elegant script reads, "The Sullivan Sisters, 1908. I have looked at this photograph hundreds of times. It belonged to my grandmother, passed down through the generations. But tonight, something compels me to look closer. Maybe it's the storm raging outside. Or perhaps the strange dreams I've been having lately, dreams of whispers and shadows and 5 women calling my name. I reach for my magnifying glass, an antique piece itself, and begin to examine each sister one by one. The eldest, Margaret, stands rigid and proud. Then the second, Elizabeth, with her characteristic half-smile, and then the third sister, Catherine. Something about her has always seemed different. I lean in closer, adjusting the glass over her neck. And that is when I see it. What appears at first glance to be a pendant is something else entirely. A strange mark. Or is it a hand? Tiny skeletal fingers wrapped around her throat. So subtle they blend into the shadows of the photograph. Invisible unless you know to look. My blood runs cold as I realize what I'm seeing. I have spent years researching my family history, but nothing prepared me for this. The photograph slips from my trembling fingers as thunder crashes outside, plunging my apartment into darkness. The story of the Sullivan sisters began long before this moment. And now I fear it is far from over. Rose Hill Manor, Massachusetts, April 1908. The evening air carried the sweet scent of apple blossoms as Henry Sullivan, a prominent local industrialist, paced nervously in his study. In the corner, the grandfather clock ticked relentlessly, marking the passing minutes with solemn precision. Henry paused to straighten his cravat in the ornate mirror above the fireplace, his reflection showing a man of 50, whose once dark hair had surrendered to grey, especially at the temples. "They'll be here soon, dear," Eleanor Sullivan said softly from the doorway. At 45, she remained a handsome woman, though worry had etched fine lines around her eyes. Her burgundy dress rustled as she crossed the room to adjust her husband's collar. "Everything must be perfect," Henry muttered, more to himself than to his wife. "Dr. Blackwood is not a man to be kept waiting." Eleanor's fingers stilled on his collar. "Must we go through with this, Henry?" The girls will do as they're told," he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "Catherine especially. I've indulged her whims for far too long. It's time she understood her duty to this family." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken concerns. The Sullivans had 5 daughters: Margaret, Elizabeth, Catherine, Anne, and young Josephine. Beautiful, accomplished young women raised with every advantage money could provide. But the family's fortunes had suffered in recent years. The new century had brought changes that Henry's textile mills had failed to adapt to. Bankruptcy loomed like a spectre over Rose Hill Manor. Dr. Ambrose Blackwood, with his mysterious wealth and connections, offered a solution. A marriage to his son would secure the Sullivans' position in society and resolve their financial troubles. That the prospective groom was nearly twice Catherine's age seemed to Henry, at least, a small price to pay. "Mother? Father?" Margaret's voice called from the hallway. At 24, she was the eldest Sullivan daughter, practical and beautiful to a fault. "The photographer has arrived. Shall we proceed with the portrait before Dr. Blackwood arrives?" Henry checked his pocket watch. "Yes, that's sensible. Where are your sisters?" "In the drawing room, father. All except Catherine. She's still upstairs." Henry's expression darkened. "Fetch her. Immediately." As Margaret hurried away, Eleanor touched her husband's arm. "She's only 18, Henry. Can you blame her for being frightened?" "Frightened?" Henry scoffed. "What does she have to be frightened of? The Blackwoods are one of the oldest families in New England. This marriage will secure her future. All our futures." Eleanor wanted to argue but held her tongue. Something about Ambrose Blackwood and his son unsettled her deeply. Their ancient house on the edge of town, Ravenscroft, had always been the subject of whispers. Strange lights seen at odd hours, unusual visitors arriving under cover of darkness, peculiar sounds carried on the night wind. But Henry dismissed such talk as provincial superstition. Upstairs, Catherine Sullivan sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection with growing despair. Her dark hair was pinned elegantly, her green dress, her finest, pressed and perfect. Yet she felt as though she were dressing for her own funeral. A soft knock at the door preceded Margaret's entrance. Her older sister's face was a mask of sympathetic determination. "Catherine, you must come down. Father is growing impatient and the photographer is waiting." Catherine turned, her blue eyes bright with unshed tears. "I cannot marry him, Margaret. There's something wrong about him. About all of them." Margaret crossed the room and took her sister's hands. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but think of the family. Of mother and father. Of all of us. This alliance will save Rose Hill." "At what cost?" Catherine whispered. Before Margaret could answer, Elizabeth appeared in the doorway. At 22, the second Sullivan sister was known for her beauty and charm. "The Blackwoods have arrived early," she announced, her voice tight with tension. "Father is asking for you both. Now." Catherine rose on shaky legs, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. "I suppose there's no delaying the inevitable." The three sisters made their way downstairs, arm in arm. In the grand entrance hall, Anne and Josephine, 19 and 16 respectively, already stood in a line, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. And there, being greeted by Henry with excessive cordiality, stood Dr. Ambrose Blackwood and his son, Thaddeus. Dr. Blackwood was tall and slender, with silver hair and penetrating grey eyes that seemed to miss nothing. His black suit was impeccably tailored, his bearing aristocratic. But it was his hands that drew Catherine's attention, long, pale fingers that reminded her of spider legs. Beside him, Thaddeus Blackwood presented a stark contrast. Where the elder Blackwood was animated, the son was still, almost unnaturally so. Thaddeus was handsome in a severe way, with sharp cheekbones and dark hair slicked back from a high forehead. But his eyes. Catherine suppressed a shudder. They were black, so dark that pupil and iris were indistinguishable, and they held no warmth whatsoever. "Ah, and here are the rest of your lovely daughters," Dr. Blackwood exclaimed, turning his unsettling gaze toward the staircase. "Exquisite, every one of them. You are truly blessed, Henry." "Indeed I am," Henry agreed, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "May I present my eldest, Margaret, followed by Elizabeth, and this is Catherine." At the mention of her name, Catherine felt Thaddeus Blackwood's eyes fix upon her. The intensity of his gaze made her skin crawl. "Miss Catherine," he said, his voice surprisingly melodious. "I've heard much about you. Your father speaks highly of your accomplishments." Catherine managed a curtsy, keeping her eyes downcast. "You are too kind, Mr. Blackwood." "Please," he stepped forward, taking her hand before she could withdraw it. "Call me Thaddeus. After all, we shall be family soon enough." His touch was cold, almost frigid. Catherine resisted the urge to snatch her hand away as he kissed her knuckles, a gesture that lasted several seconds too long. "Well, then," Henry clapped his hands together. "The photographer is waiting in the drawing room. Shall we proceed with the portrait before dinner?" "An excellent suggestion," Dr. Blackwood nodded. "Though perhaps just the sisters for now. A keepsake of their youth and beauty before life's changes." The way he said changes sent a chill down Catherine's spine. In the drawing room, the photographer, a nervous man named Mr. Parker, had set up his equipment. A large camera stood on a tripod facing an ornate settee and several high-backed chairs. "Ladies, if you would be so kind," Mr. Parker instructed, disappearing beneath the black cloth. "The eldest in the center, perhaps." Margaret took the middle chair, with Elizabeth standing behind her right shoulder. Catherine was placed to Margaret's left, with and beside her and young Josephine seated on a small stool. "Perfect," Mr. Parker muttered. Now, please remain very still. The exposure will take several seconds. As the sisters held their positions, Catherine became aware of Thaddeus Blackwood watching from the doorway. His gaze never left her. In the periphery of her vision, she thought she saw something strange, a shadow that didn't quite match his form, stretching and undulating behind him. "Miss Catherine, please face forward," Mr. Parker called out. Catherine turned her attention back to the camera, forcing her expression into serene dignity. But as she did, she felt something, a sensation like cold fingers brushing against the nape of her neck. It became more deliberate, wrapping around to the front of her throat. She wanted to scream, to brush it away, but Mr. Parker had just removed the lens cap. To move would ruin the photograph. So Catherine remained frozen, her heart hammering, as the invisible fingers seemed to tighten. "Excellent," Mr. Parker finally announced. "I believe we have captured a fine image. Would you care to see the plate, Mr. Sullivan?" As the others moved to inspect the glass negative, Catherine reached up to touch her neck. There was nothing there. Yet the sensation of cold lingered. "Are you unwell, sister?" Anne whispered. "It's nothing," Catherine lied. "Just a chill." But across the room, she caught Thaddeus Blackwood watching her, a knowing smile on his thin lips. The dinner was an elaborate affair. Catherine barely touched her food. Seated beside Thaddeus, she was acutely aware of his every movement, the way he barely ate, the unnatural stillness. "I understand you enjoy poetry, Miss Catherine," he said. "Particularly the romantics. Shelley and Byron, I believe." Surprised he knew this, Catherine nodded. "Yes, though my father considers such reading frivolous." "Not at all," Thaddeus countered. The romantics understood something vital. That beneath the veneer of civilization lie powerful primal forces. Forces that cannot be tamed, only channeled. He leaned closer. Forces that some of us are born to command. Before Catherine could respond, Dr. Blackwood rose. "My friends," he announced, lifting his wine glass. "A toast. To new beginnings and old bloodlines. To the union of our families, which I believe will produce most interesting results." The adults raised their glasses, though Catherine noticed her mother's hand trembled. "And now," Dr. Blackwood continued, "I have brought a small gift." He removed a velvet box and passed it to Thaddeus. Inside was a necklace, a dark red stone set in intricate silver filigree that resembled intertwined fingers. "A family heirloom," Dr. Blackwood explained. "Said to protect the wearer. I would ask that Catherine wear it as a symbol of our family's imminent union." Before Catherine could object, Thaddeus was behind her, fastening the necklace. The pendant settled against her collarbone, heavier than it looked and unnaturally cold. "There," Thaddeus murmured, his breath chilling her ear. "It suits you perfectly. As if it were made for you." Catherine resisted the urge to tear it off. It felt invasive, as if trying to sink into her skin. As the evening progressed, Catherine grew lightheaded. Colors seemed too bright, sounds too sharp. When Thaddeus asked her to walk with him, she found herself unable to refuse. "You feel it already, don't you?" he asked. "The pendant's influence." "I don't know what you mean," Catherine replied, though her hand rose to touch the jewel. "Of course you do," Thaddeus smiled, his teeth seeming too sharp. "You're special, Catherine. Different. More receptive to certain energies. My father recognized it. It's why you were chosen." "Chosen for what?" "To continue our line. To bear children with unique gifts. The Blackwood bloodline must remain pure in its impurity." Catherine didn't understand fully, but a primal part of her recognized the threat. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm feeling faint. I should retire." "Of course," Thaddeus inclined his head. "Rest well. The pendant will help prepare you for what's to come." Catherine fled. In her bedroom, she tried to remove the necklace, but the clasp wouldn't open. She tugged harder, but the chain seemed to tighten. A soft knock. "Catherine?" "It's Elizabeth." May I come in? Catherine covered the necklace. Yes. Elizabeth slipped inside. Are you all right? You left so suddenly. I'm fine, Catherine lied. Just tired. Elizabeth wasn't fooled. It's him, isn't it? Thaddeus. There's something not right. Catherine hesitated, then confided. Elizabeth, I cannot marry him. He speaks of strange things. And this necklace. She pulled down her collar. Elizabeth gasped. Catherine, that looks wrong. Let me help you remove it. But when Elizabeth touched the chain, she recoiled. It's ice cold. And did it just move? Catherine rushed to her mirror. The silver filigree did appear to be slowly shifting, the metal strands writhing. The stone pulsed with a dim red light. We must speak to Mother, Elizabeth decided. Knew what? Both sisters turned. Margaret stood in the doorway. Elizabeth explained their concerns, but Margaret remained skeptical. You're letting your imagination run wild. The Blackwoods are unusual, but respected. This match is important. More important than Catherine's happiness? Her safety. Margaret's facade cracked. Of course not. But what would you have us do? Father has already accepted. Then I'll run away, Catherine declared. Tonight. Don't be absurd, Margaret began. I'll help you, Elizabeth said firmly. We can go to Aunt Judith in New York. Margaret looked torn. Finally, she sighed. If you're determined, you'll need money. She removed a pearl brooch. Take this. You can sell it. Catherine embraced her. Thank you, Margaret. Don't thank me yet, Margaret warned. If Father discovers I helped you, you must leave no trace. The sisters formulated a plan. Catherine would slip out after midnight. Elizabeth would create a diversion. Margaret would leave a misleading clue. As her sisters left, Catherine packed. The necklace pulsed against her skin in rhythm with her heartbeat. She tried to cut the chain with scissors, but the metal wouldn't yield. Outside, the wind picked up. A storm was brewing. As midnight approached, Catherine changed into a simple dress and boots, donned a dark cloak, and picked up her valise. A sudden gust blew her curtains inward, bringing a soft, rhythmic tapping at her window. Cautiously, she pulled back the curtain. Nothing was there except the swaying branches of the old oak. But one branch seemed to move differently, deliberately reaching toward her window, its twigs curling like fingers. Catherine stumbled back. She had to leave now. She crept to her door and opened it slowly. The hallway was dark. She moved toward the servants' staircase. A floorboard creaked behind her. Catherine spun around. Thaddeus Blackwood stood perfectly still, watching her with those bottomless eyes. He wore the same formal attire. Going somewhere, Miss Sullivan? He asked, his voice calm. Catherine clutched her valise. Mr. Blackwood. I was just getting some air. The storm. You disappoint me, Catherine, he said softly. I had hoped you would understand the honor. The Blackwood lineage extends back centuries. We have walked with gods and demons alike. Please, Catherine whispered. Let me pass. I'm afraid I can't do that. You've been chosen. The pendant has already begun its work. As if responding, the necklace burned against her skin. Catherine gasped. The silver filigree seemed to be burrowing into her flesh. What have you done to me? I've marked you. The pendant contains a fragment of our family's guardian. It seeks a host. A vessel. You should be honored. Lightning flashed. In that brief light, Catherine saw something behind Thaddeus, a vast shadow with too many limbs, its edges shifting, looking directly at her. Catherine screamed, but the sound died as invisible fingers constricted her neck. The pendant burned hotter, she felt something moving beneath her skin. Don't fight it, Thaddeus advised. The more you resist, the more painful the integration will be. Desperate, Catherine swung her valise at him. It connected, sending him staggering. She turned and fled toward the stairs. Behind her, Thaddeus let out a sound that was not quite human. The shadows in the hallway writhed, reaching for her. Catherine fell down the servants' stairs. In the kitchen, she fumbled with the garden door latch. Finally, it gave way, and she burst out into the storm. Rain lashed her face as she ran across the lawn. The pendant's pain spread through her chest. Each step became more difficult. Behind her, the garden door slammed open. Thaddeus was in pursuit. The woods loomed. Catherine plunged in. Branches whipped her face as she ran. Her strength was ebbing. Her foot caught on a root, and she fell hard. As she lay gasping, she became aware of a presence. Lifting her head, she saw a figure among the trees. Not Thaddeus. It was tall and gaunt, its proportions wrong. Its face was a smooth, blank expanse with a single vertical slit that pulsed. The figure stepped toward her, moving with unnatural fluidity. The shadows bent toward it. Catherine scrambled back, grabbing a fallen branch. "Stay back," she warned. The figure paused, tilting its head. Then it spoke, not with a voice, but directly into her mind. "Vessel." The word carried impressions of vast cold, ancient hunger, patient malevolence. "I am not your vessel," Catherine declared. "Not yours to choose. The pendant has marked you. The Blackwood heir must be born." As it communicated, Catherine felt the pendant's tendrils burrow deeper. Blood trickled down her chest. Lightning struck a nearby tree. In the brilliant light, Catherine saw something beyond the entity, a small stone structure, an ancient crypt, its entrance marked by shifting symbols. Catherine struggled to her feet. "What are you?" she demanded, playing for time. "What do you want?" The entity drifted closer. "I am the guardian. The keeper. The door and the key. Through me, the Blackwoods transcend. Through you, the line continues." Its mental voice pushed against her mind. She felt her thoughts sluggish, her will weakening. With her last strength, Catherine hurled the branch and lunged sideways, dashing for the crypt. The guardian pressed harder against her mind, trying to seize control of her limbs. Catherine staggered toward the crypt. The symbols on its surface were a form of ancient, inhuman writing. At the center of the entrance was an indentation that matched her pendant. The pendant was a key. Behind her, she heard Thaddeus calling her name. He had found her. Catherine reached the crypt and pressed her hand against the stone door. It was ice cold, vibrating as if something massive moved within. "Do not open the door," the guardian's voice thundered in her head. "You know not what you do." But Catherine understood. Whatever bound the guardian was connected to this door. "Catherine!" Thaddeus appeared at the clearing's edge, soaked, his face twisted with rage. "Step away from there. You don't understand." "I understand enough," Catherine replied. With a final desperate yank, she tore the pendant from her throat, taking flesh with it. The pain was blinding. Her hand moved, fitting the blooded jewel into the indentation. The ground shook violently. The air rippled. From within the crypt came a vast, hungry sound. The guardian's blank face contorted, the slit widening into a mouth filled with impossible geometries. It lunged. "What have you done?" "The door opens both ways." Thaddeus rushed forward, his human facade falling away to reveal something ancient and terrible beneath. But before either could reach her, the stone door swung inward. From the blackness beyond emerged nothing visible. But Catherine could feel it. A presence far vaster, more alien. A consciousness so immense it threatened to shatter her mind. The guardian shrieked, a sound that shattered trees. It turned from her, facing the open doorway, its form expanding as if for battle. Thaddeus reached Catherine, grabbing her arm with fingers now too long, too jointed. "You fool! You've released it! The progenitor. The guardian was but a fragment. This is beyond containment. Catherine pulled away. Then perhaps your family should never have bound it in the first place. The invisible presence surged forward, engulfing the guardian. Reality buckled. Trees bent impossibly. Rain froze mid-air. Thaddeus abandoned her, rushing toward the conflict, chanting words in an ancient language. There was a moment of perfect stillness. Then, with a sound like the universe tearing, both entities vanished. Not destroyed, but removed. Cast back into their original realm, taking the doorway and its power with them. The backlash hit like a physical wave. Catherine was thrown backward, slamming into an oak tree. Darkness took her. She awoke to sunlight. The storm had passed. She sat up gingerly. Her neck and chest burned, but when she touched them, she felt only smooth scar tissue, as if months old. Of the crypt, there was no sign. The pendant was gone. Catherine walked back to Rose Hill Manor. She expected fury, scandal. But as she emerged from the forest, the house looked normal. Through the kitchen window, the staff went about their routines. The clock showed just past 6 a.m., barely 6 hours after she had fled. She slipped inside and upstairs. The hallway showed no trace of the confrontation. Her bedroom was exactly as she'd left it, her valise still packed. A soft knock. "Catherine?" "It's Elizabeth." "Are you awake?" Catherine quickly covered her scars. "Yes, come in." Elizabeth entered. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." "I don't blame you, with those Blackwoods in the house. There's something not right about them." Catherine stared. "Elizabeth, don't you remember our plan? I was going to run away last night." Elizabeth frowned. "Run away? What are you talking about?" "The Blackwoods only arrived yesterday evening. Father hasn't even discussed marriage yet." Catherine sat heavily on the bed. According to Elizabeth, the previous night had passed without incident. "The photograph," Catherine said suddenly. "Mr. Parker took our portrait. Has he developed it yet?" "I believe he's working on it this morning." "Catherine, are you feeling well? You look pale." "I'm fine. Just strange dreams." After Elizabeth left, Catherine went to Mr. Parker's darkroom. "Ah, Miss Sullivan," he greeted. "You're just in time. The image is almost ready." Catherine watched as the photograph gradually appeared. 5 young women in formal pose. At first glance, normal. But as the image clarified, she leaned closer. There, just visible against her neck, was a small, dark shape, like a hand with elongated fingers wrapped around her throat. Mr. Parker noticed it. How strange. A flaw in the negative, perhaps. A shadow. "Would you like me to try again?" "No," Catherine said quietly. "It's perfect as it is." It hadn't been a dream. Something had happened, altering reality, erasing evidence. But not completely. The photograph had captured a trace of the truth. Over the following days, nothing extraordinary occurred. Dr. Blackwood sent a note cancelling his visit. Henry was disappointed but moved on. Life returned to normal. Yet Catherine knew it never would be. She had glimpsed what lay beneath reality. The scars remained. Occasionally, she'd wake hearing a voice calling from far away, but it eventually ceased. Years passed. Catherine never married, pursuing a career in photography. Her sisters moved away. Rose Hill was sold in 1915. Catherine kept the photograph, the single proof. The 5 Sullivan sisters, with a 6th presence barely visible. Sometimes, in the quiet hours, she would study it and wonder. Were they truly gone? Or merely waiting for another doorway, another key, another vessel? The questions remained unanswered. Perhaps that was for the best. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. I set down my magnifying glass, my hands trembling. The story of Catherine Sullivan and the Blackwoods had been lost to history. But the photograph remained. And now, over a century later, I had discovered what she saw. I glance at my own neck in the mirror, at the strange birthmark that has always resembled fingers. The birthmark that appears in the same place on my mother, my grandmother, and every firstborn daughter in our line since Catherine Sullivan. Outside, the storm continues to rage. Somewhere in the darkness, I swear I can hear something calling my name. The Sullivan sisters' photograph sits innocently in its frame. 5 young women frozen in time. But now that you know what to look for, perhaps you'll see it too, the unnatural shadow at Catherine's throat. Sometimes the most terrifying truths are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally see them. And once seen, they can never be unseen. Remember to like and subscribe to Shadow Frames for more hidden histories and photographic mysteries from the past. Until next time, look carefully at the shadows in your family albums. You never know what might be looking back. Continue it. The voice calling my name wasn't a trick of the wind. It was a thread of sound, thin and deliberate, weaving through the cacophony of the storm. It was the same voice from my dreams, the one that whispered of 5 sisters and shadows that clung to skin. My eyes were locked on my reflection, on the birthmark that was a perfect, twisted echo of the mark on Catherine's throat in the photograph. My apartment plunged back into darkness as another peal of thunder shook the building. The power was out for good this time. In the sudden blackness, the sepia-toned image on my desk seemed to glow with its own faint, malevolent light. I fumbled for the emergency flashlight in my desk drawer, my fingers brushing against cold metal. The beam cut a shaky path through the room, and the first thing it illuminated was the photograph. The shadows within it had deepened. The skeletal fingers around Catherine's neck no longer looked like a trick of the light or a flaw in the emulsion. They looked solid, possessive. And as I watched, frozen, the faint, painted-on half-smile of Elizabeth, the second sister, seemed to tighten. Her eyes, once solemn, now held a glint of panic in the stark flashlight beam. This wasn't just a historical artifact anymore. It was a window. And something on the other side was looking back. The voice came again, clearer now, whispering not from outside but from right beside me, as if the speaker's lips were an inch from my ear. Find the others. A jolt of pure adrenaline shot through me. I stumbled back from the desk, the flashlight beam dancing wildly across the walls. The air grew thick and cold, the sweet, cloying scent of decaying apple blossoms cutting through the smell of ozone and rain. It was the scent from the story, from Rose Hill Manor in 1908. My grandmother's stories, the ones I'd thought were just fanciful tales to spook a child, came rushing back. She'd never spoken of Catherine by name, but she'd whispered of the sister who said no, of a cold key and a door that shouldn't be opened. She'd traced the birthmark on her own neck, her eyes distant, and say it was a reminder of a debt that was never fully paid. A debt of blood. The flashlight beam landed on my laptop, its screen black and dead. Useless. But I didn't need it. My research was old school, a habit I'd inherited. I kept physical copies. I lunged for the filing cabinet beside my bookshelf, yanking open the bottom drawer marked Sullivan Genealogy. Folders and loose-leaf paper spilled out. I knelt on the floor, the flashlight propped against a stack of books, my heart hammering against my ribs. I found the family tree I'd painstakingly drawn years ago. My line was clear, from Catherine, who never married, down through her younger sister Anne's line. And had married, had a daughter, who had a daughter, and so on. Every firstborn daughter, carrying the mark. But what of the others? Margaret, Elizabeth, Josephine. Their lines were fainter, notes scribbled in the margins from old letters and census records. I'd never followed them with any seriousness. They were branches that led away from my own. Find the others. My trembling fingers traced the lines. Margaret Sullivan had married a banker from Boston and had 3 sons. A dead end. Elizabeth had moved to New York, had 1 daughter, who? I squinted at my own cramped handwriting. The daughter, Charlotte, had married a man named Walker. They'd had a son, Robert Walker. But there was a star next to Robert's name. A note I'd made from a digitized newspaper archive. Robert Walker, local historian, specializes in preservation of New England's occult history. Resides in Salem, Massachusetts. Salem. A 3-hour drive from my apartment in this storm. Impossible. Josephine, the youngest. My blood went cold. She died young. 1910, the same year Ravenscroft, the Blackwood estate, had burned to the ground. The record was vague, a tragic accident. But she'd had a child before she died. A daughter, given up for adoption. The trail went cold. I had a name for the adoptive family, though. Peterson. And a city. Chicago. 2 others. Elizabeth's line in Salem. Josephine's in Chicago. The voice whispered again, a sigh that rustled the papers on my floor. The key is not complete. It was broken. Scattered. We are the anchors. I looked at the photograph. The 5 sisters. 5 points. My eyes were drawn back to the mark on Catherine's neck. The key. She hadn't just destroyed it. She had shattered it. And a piece of it, its essence, its curse, had lodged itself in the bloodline. In us. The mark on my neck began to prickle, a cold burn that seeped beneath the skin. The flashlight beam flickered. A new sound joined the storm, a dry, rustling scrape at my apartment door. Not the wind. It was the sound of something dry and brittle being dragged slowly across the wooden floor of the hallway. Then, a faint, rhythmic tapping. Like long, thin fingernails testing the lock. I scrambled to my feet, backing away from the door, my breath caught in my throat. The tapping grew more insistent. I wasn't just being called. I was being hunted. The things that had come for Catherine were testing the boundaries of this new reality, this new door, the one opened by my seeing, my knowing. The flashlight died. In the absolute darkness, the scent of apple blossoms was overwhelming. The tapping at the door stopped. Silence, heavier than the thunder, pressed in. Then, from directly in front of me, came the soft, wet sound of lips parting. You see us now, the voice spoke, no longer a whisper, but a rotten, breathy thing that filled the room. Find the others. Make the key whole. Or we will be pulled back. And we will not come alone. I stood there, paralyzed in the dark, the weight of generations pressing down on me. The story wasn't over. Catherine's defiance had only granted a stay of execution, a century of quiet. The debt was now due. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one that had just begun inside. I had to move. I had to find Elizabeth's descendant in Salem and trace Josephine's lost line to Chicago. We were the Sullivan sisters now, bound across time by a shadow that needed to be made whole. And it was waiting for us.